They sent the infertile alien princess to a human as a joke, but she returned with a child. For thousands of years, the Viridians had ruled multiple star systems, their ships gliding like silver arrows through the void. Every member of the empire was trained to be perfect in thought, skill, and purpose. Yet even in a society that prized perfection above all, there were rare exceptions. Princess Lyria was one such exception. The royal palace on Viridia Prime gleamed with crystal towers and floating walkways, but within its walls, whispers traveled faster than light. Lyria, the daughter of Emperor Selrin, had grown up hearing the whispers herself. She was bright, elegant, and capable in almost every aspect, but there was one truth that clouded her life: she could not bear children. For the Viridian Empire, this was considered more than a personal tragedy. Royal heirs ensured the continuity of dynasties, the stability of worlds, and the preservation of power. To be infertile was not just a private matter. It was a flaw, a stain on an otherwise perfect lineage. The Council of the Empire, a group of elderly advisors who prided themselves on logic and strategy, viewed Lyria's condition as an opportunity for amusement. One cold, silver morning, Lyria stood before the council, her robes brushing the floor of the grand chamber. The room smelled faintly of ozone and polished metal. She was calm, but her eyes betrayed the quiet fire within. The council, seated on floating chairs, spoke in unison. "Princess Lyria," the chief advisor intoned, "the council has devised a solution to your predicament. It is an experiment of opportunity." Lyria raised an eyebrow. She had heard enough euphemisms in her life to understand what this meant, and she was not pleased. The chief advisor continued, "You shall travel to a human colony. Their planet is primitive, their technology simple. The humans are incapable of understanding advanced Viridian science. You shall attempt natural methods. Their genetic material may be compatible, but it is highly unlikely. Failure is expected." Lyria's jaw tightened. She had faced many challenges, but this was different. The council framed it as a punishment disguised as amusement, a game meant to humiliate her. But Lyria was no stranger to underestimation. She had spent years mastering strategy, science, and diplomacy, skills the council had grudgingly acknowledged. And now they were sending her to a world they considered inferior, expecting her to fail. "I accept your challenge," she said evenly. Her voice echoed softly through the chamber. "But do not mistake my compliance for weakness." The council murmured, some chuckling quietly. They thought they had won the first round. Lyria, however, saw opportunity in disguise. When the preparations were complete, Lyria boarded the sleek, silver transport ship that would carry her to the human colony. The vessel's engines hummed like a living creature, and as it lifted off, the palace below became a shrinking mosaic of towers and light. She studied the stars streaking past the viewport. Humans were said to be unpredictable, emotional, and fragile, but Lyria had a habit of noticing what others overlooked. Perhaps this journey would reveal more than the council intended. After weeks of interstellar travel, the ship descended through the hazy clouds of the human planet, a small world on the edge of a star system. From orbit, it seemed almost fragile: blue oceans, green landmasses, and clouds that shifted like delicate silk. Lyria felt a strange curiosity stir inside her. She had been taught to see planets as resources, stars as coordinates, and populations as statistics. But this world, with its soft colors and moving waters, felt alive. She landed in the outskirts of a small human city. The colony was modest, simple structures of metal and stone, populated by humans who bustled through streets, tended gardens, and laughed in ways that seemed entirely uncalculated. The air smelled of wet soil and cooking fires, a smell entirely alien to the sterile scent of the palace. Lyria stepped onto the ground and noticed how the humans paused to look at her, tall, elegant, and unlike anything they had seen. Their eyes widened not with fear but curiosity. One human, a man in simple clothing with kind eyes, approached her. "Welcome to our city," he said, bowing slightly. "I am Kale. How may I assist you?" Lyria studied him carefully. His voice was warm, calm, and full of quiet confidence. This was not the type of creature her council had warned her about. There was something different here. "I am Princess Lyria of Viridia," she replied. "I am here to observe your methods." Kale nodded, seemingly unshaken. "Then we shall share with you all that we know." Over the next days, Lyria explored the human colony. She saw how humans worked together, solving problems with ingenuity rather than authority. She watched them repair machines with limited tools, grow food in challenging climates, and heal the sick with care and attention rather than advanced technology. Their methods were unconventional, their science imperfect, but there was a spark in them, a determination that refused to bend. Lyria realized something startling. The Council had dismissed humans as inferior, incapable of adapting or surviving, yet here they were, thriving despite limited resources. She began to understand that humans possessed qualities the Viridians rarely acknowledged: creativity, resilience, and an unyielding will to survive. Kale became her guide, showing her the colony's innovations. They crafted water purifiers from simple metals, developed communication networks without Viridian tech, and even created medicines from natural resources. Lyria noted every detail, analyzing, learning, and quietly admiring the humans' capabilities. She found herself asking questions, challenging assumptions, and even laughing at their odd jokes. One evening, as the twin moons rose above the horizon, Lyria sat beside Kale by a small pond. The water reflected the moons, shimmering like molten silver. "Your people are remarkable," she admitted softly. "I had expected chaos, inefficiency, failure, but you adapt, you endure," Kale smiled. "We survive because we must, but perhaps it is more than survival, we care for each other." "That is something your council may have forgotten." Lyria considered his words. The Viridians prized perfection and control, yet they underestimated the power of empathy, courage, and adaptability. Here, on this fragile blue world, humans demonstrated a strength that could not be measured in technology alone. As days turned into weeks, Lyria continued her observation. She met doctors, engineers, farmers, and teachers, each contributing to the colony's life in ways that were small but significant. The humans welcomed her, not with reverence, but with genuine curiosity. They asked questions about her world, her life, and her experiences. Lyria realized she was learning more about humanity than she had ever learned about her own people. But the Council's challenge loomed over her. She had not yet proven anything about herself, only that she could survive among humans. The true test, the one the Council expected her to fail, had not yet arrived. She understood that sooner or later she would have to confront the very limitations her empire assumed she could not overcome. In the quiet moments of night, when the human colony slept beneath the twin moons, Lyria looked out at the stars. She reflected on the Council's arrogance and her own determination. She had been sent here as a joke, a demonstration of human inadequacy, but she would turn this challenge into an opportunity. For the first time, Lyria felt a strange hope. Perhaps failure was not the only path. Perhaps the combination of human ingenuity and Viridian knowledge could yield something extraordinary, something her empire had never anticipated. The journey ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges the Council had not considered. But for Princess Lyria, the human world was no longer just a place of ridicule. It was a laboratory of life, of resilience, and of untapped potential. And within that potential lay a possibility that could change everything, if she had the courage to see it through. Days turned into weeks, and Princess Lyria's time on the human colony deepened her understanding of these creatures her empire had so easily dismissed. Each day brought new surprises, new lessons, and new reasons to doubt the assumptions she had carried from Viridia Prime. Lyria had begun to take on a routine with Kale as her guide. Each morning, they walked through the city, visiting workshops, laboratories, and fields. Unlike the Viridian way, which demanded perfection and efficiency, humans operated with patience, trial, and error. Machines might fail, crops might die, yet they adjusted, repaired, and tried again. The concept of failure as a lesson, rather than shame, was foreign to Lyria but strangely inspiring. One morning, Kale led her to a building that seemed almost ordinary from the outside, a metal structure with large windows, filled with equipment that hummed softly. Inside, humans were busy examining plants, liquids, and small mechanical devices. "This is our laboratory," Kale explained. "We do not have Viridian technology, but we work with what we have. Science is about understanding, not just power." Lyria observed a young woman carefully adjusting a delicate instrument. She noticed the precision of human hands, the careful attention to detail despite the lack of advanced tools. It reminded Lyria of the laboratories back on Viridia, but here there was warmth, creativity, and a sense of purpose beyond mere protocol. "This is remarkable," Lyria said, her voice quiet. Your people can do so much with so little. Kale smiled. We survive because we must, but we thrive because we care. Tools can only do so much. It is the mind and the heart that matter most. Lyria considered this. In Viridia, power was measured by technology and conquest. Empathy and creativity were rarely valued. Humans, however, seemed to draw strength from their connections to each other, from their willingness to help, to innovate, and to adapt. Over the next few days, Lyria began assisting in the laboratory. At first, she was careful, testing the limits of human methods with her Viridian knowledge. She combined small fragments of alien biotechnology with human techniques, cautiously observing results. To her surprise, the humans were not intimidated by her abilities. Instead, they treated her as a partner, eager to learn and share. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the horizon, Lyria and Kale stood in the laboratory, examining a series of samples. You see, Kale said, holding a small vial, the humans have ways to enhance life without relying solely on machines. We observe, we test, and we adapt. Lyria nodded. Your approach, it is very different from mine. On Viridia, we would use a device or a formula to solve a problem instantly. You take time, observe, and let nature guide you. Yes, Kale replied. Nature is not our enemy. It teaches us if we are willing to listen. The words stayed with Lyria long after the discussion ended. She realized that humans' ability to endure hardship, to experiment without fear of failure, and to care for one another could not be measured by statistics or technology alone. These qualities were rare in the galaxy, and perhaps they were exactly what her empire had overlooked. One afternoon, while walking through the outskirts of the colony, Lyria observed humans tending the fields. They worked in small groups, discussing methods and sharing tools. A problem with irrigation had arisen, and instead of panicking, they quickly devised a solution using simple materials, pipes, pumps, and gravity. Within hours, the water flowed correctly again. Lyria's thoughts drifted. Could it be possible that humans were more resilient than even the Viridians? That their limitations were not weaknesses but opportunities for growth? She pondered this quietly, feeling a strange respect growing inside her. Kale noticed her gaze. You think we are primitive, he said lightly, but sometimes the simplest solutions are the most effective. Lyria smiled faintly. I admit, I am beginning to understand your people. As days passed, Lyria began to feel a bond forming, not with the humans in general, but with one in particular. Kale's intelligence, patience, and quiet determination intrigued her. He listened without judgment, asked questions with curiosity, and never tried to control her. In a society where rank and power dictated relationships, this was a novelty. Lyria found herself thinking about him even when she was alone, considering his ideas, his gestures, and the way he approached problems. But Lyria had not forgotten the reason she was sent here. Her infertility was a mark of shame in Viridian eyes, a reason for the council to laugh at her. She had yet to confront it fully. In secret, she began to explore possibilities that could change everything. The humans, with their unconventional methods, might hold the key to achieving what the Viridians deemed impossible. Late one night, Lyria returned to the laboratory alone. The colony slept under the twin moons, their lights flickering softly like fireflies. She retrieved a small device from her ship, an analyzer capable of merging Viridian and human genetic data. Carefully, she began running simulations, comparing human DNA with her own. The results were unexpected. Human biology was flexible, adaptive, and in some ways compatible with Viridian life. Lyria's initial calculations had suggested failure, yet the simulations showed a path, narrow, uncertain, but real. It was as if humans' resilience had left traces in their very DNA, traces that could interact with Viridian genetics in ways her council had never imagined. Her mind raced. Could it truly be possible to overcome her condition with the help of human methods? Could the humans, dismissed as simple and unworthy, provide the solution the Empire deemed impossible? Lyria's heart quickened with a mixture of excitement and fear. She had been sent here as a joke, but now she saw a glimmer of hope, hope that was entirely her own. The next day, Lyria confided in Kale. I have discovered something, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. It may be possible for me to bear a child. Kale's eyes widened, but he did not react with disbelief. Instead, he studied her carefully. This would be remarkable, he said slowly. If it works, it will change everything, not just for you, but for everyone. Lyria nodded. The council expects me to fail. They will see this as proof of their superiority. But what if we succeed? Kale smiled. Then perhaps they will begin to understand that strength is not always measured in power or technology. Sometimes it is measured in perseverance, creativity, and the courage to try. Together, they began planning the next steps. They would combine Viridian knowledge with human techniques, using what the humans knew about adaptation, genetics, and healing. Lyria would test herself, carefully, cautiously, but with determination. The process would be long, unpredictable, and risky, but it was a chance she could not ignore. Over the following weeks, Lyria and Kale worked tirelessly. They experimented with human medicinal herbs, genetic techniques, and Viridian biotechnology. Lyria learned to appreciate the human approach, careful observation, incremental changes, and constant adjustment. Unlike the Viridian insistence on immediate perfection, humans embraced trial and error, understanding that failure was a necessary step toward discovery. Lyria began to notice subtle changes in herself. Her energy levels improved, her health stabilized, and for the first time in years she felt a sense of possibility. The human methods were working, not perfectly, not yet, but the signs were undeniable. One evening, after a long day of experimentation, Lyria and Kale sat outside the laboratory. The twin moons cast a gentle glow over the colony, illuminating the small buildings and the humans moving through the streets. Lyria took a deep breath. "Kale," she said softly, "I never expected to learn so much from your people. I came here as a joke, but I am beginning to understand what the council overlooked. Humans are strong in ways they cannot measure." Kale nodded. "Strength comes in many forms. Your people measure it with machines and ranks. We measure it by survival, by adaptation, and by the courage to continue despite uncertainty." Lyria smiled faintly. Perhaps the Empire will need to learn this lesson soon." As the night deepened, Lyria felt a quiet hope. For the first time, the challenge sent by her empire did not seem impossible. The humans had taught her patience, resilience, and creativity, qualities her own people undervalued. And within that knowledge lay the possibility of achieving something the council had declared impossible. The princess's journey of discovery had only just begun, but already the seeds of change were taking root. Lyria was no longer merely a pawn in a cruel joke. She was a student of humanity, a learner of possibilities, and perhaps the first to see a future where humans and Viridians could achieve something extraordinary together. And in that future, nothing would ever be the same. The days had grown warmer on the human colony, and Princess Lyria felt an energy she had never experienced before. Each sunrise brought new experiments, new observations, and new lessons about human resilience. Her mornings began with a walk through the colony, accompanied by Kale, as they observed the humans working together. Farmers irrigated fields, engineers repaired machinery, and children learned by exploring the world around them. Everything was alive with purpose. Yet in the quiet of the laboratory, a far greater purpose called to Lyria. The discovery she and Kale had uncovered, the possibility of overcoming her infertility, was no longer a theory. Every measurement, every observation, and every experiment pointed to one conclusion. Humans carried genetic flexibility that could interact with Viridian biology in extraordinary ways. The council had expected her to fail. They had sent her here as a spectacle, certain that no combination of human and Viridian methods could succeed. And yet, Lyria could feel hope growing inside her, a hope so powerful it almost frightened her. This was the first time in her life that she truly believed in the possibility of a miracle. Lyria began the experiment carefully. The process was delicate. It required merging human and Viridian genetic patterns without overwhelming either. If the balance tipped too far, failure could be dangerous. She relied on Kale's guidance, learning to combine human ingenuity with Viridian precision. Together, they designed a plan, step by step, documenting each observation meticulously. "Are you certain this will work?" Kale asked one evening, his eyes reflecting the twin moons as they rose over the horizon. Lyria paused. "I do not know for certain, but certainty has never been part of discovery. Only courage, patience, and willingness to try." Kale nodded. "Then we will proceed carefully, one step at a time." The first stages of the experiment were promising, yet exhausting. Days passed in a blur of calculations, trials, and small successes. Lyria marveled at the human methods of adaptation. While Viridians relied on flawless execution, humans experimented constantly, learned from mistakes, and applied lessons immediately. Lyria found herself adopting their mindset, thinking in ways her empire had never encouraged. Late one evening, Kale brought her a small human tea, a drink infused with herbs grown on the colony. They sat together outside the laboratory, the twin moons casting silver light on the quiet city. "You seem different," Kale said softly. "More alive." Lyria smiled faintly. "I feel as if I am learning to breathe for the first time. Your people are unlike anything I expected. They are strong in ways I cannot measure." Kale's smile was quiet but warm. "Perhaps strength is not always in measurement. Sometimes it is in endurance, in creativity, and in the courage to face the impossible." The following weeks were a mixture of success and setbacks. Each step forward was met with a new challenge. Lyria encountered moments of doubt. What if the human genetic traits were incompatible in a way they could not predict? What if the experiment failed completely? But with Kale's steady support, she persisted. She learned to trust not only the science, but also the human's ability to adapt and improvise. Then, one morning, as the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, something extraordinary happened. Lyria awoke to find subtle changes in herself, an energy she had not felt before, a sense of possibility that went beyond theory. She conducted the standard tests, her hands steady, her mind sharp. The results were astonishing. The human-Viridian genetic interaction was not only compatible, it was flourishing. Lyria could hardly contain her excitement. She rushed to Kale's side, her voice trembling with awe. "It is working. The process, it is working." Kale studied the data carefully, his brow furrowed in concentration. Then slowly, a smile spread across his face. This is remarkable. You are succeeding where no one thought possible." The magnitude of what they had achieved began to sink in. The Council had assumed humans were primitive, incapable of contributing to complex biological solutions. Yet here, on a small blue planet, Lyria and Kale had discovered a path that even the most advanced Viridian technology could not have predicted. The humans' adaptability, creativity, and resilience had made the impossible possible. As days turned into weeks, Lyria's confidence grew. The experiment required careful monitoring, but each stage brought new understanding. She learned to synchronize Viridian biotechnology with human genetic patterns, a process that demanded patience, observation, and flexibility. And all the while, she observed the humans' own methods, how they adjusted to setbacks, how they learned from mistakes, and how they celebrated even small successes. Through it all, Kale remained by her side. Their partnership had grown deeper, founded on mutual respect, trust, and the shared pursuit of discovery. Lyria realized that she valued his insights not just for their practicality, but for the perspective they offered, a perspective that her empire had long ignored. One evening, as they reviewed data from the latest experiment, Lyria felt a moment of clarity. "Kale," she said softly, "the Council believes this journey is a failure before it has even begun. They think humans are incapable. But I see now, humans are capable of more than any Council can measure. Their resilience, their courage, it is extraordinary." Kale nodded. "You have seen what I have always believed. Strength is not in perfection or power alone. It is in the heart, the mind, and the willingness to endure." Lyria considered his words. She had spent her life in a world that prized control and perfection. On Viridia, failure was unacceptable, and deviation from expectations was punished. But here, among humans, she had discovered that true strength came from trying, adapting, and persevering. The lesson was profound, and it reshaped her understanding of herself, her empire, and the galaxy beyond. Then came the most critical stage of the experiment, a procedure that had never been attempted in Viridia or any human colony. It required combining human genetic flexibility with Viridian biotechnology in a delicate process that could, if successful, overcome her infertility entirely. Lyria prepared carefully, following every step with precision. Kale assisted, guiding her through human techniques and ensuring the process remained stable. The procedure was long, tiring, and tense. For hours, they monitored the interaction of human and Viridian genetics, observing every reaction, every change. Lyria felt her heart pound with anticipation. She could feel the energy of possibility around her, the hum of life responding to the careful merging of two worlds. At last, after what seemed like an eternity, the process reached its peak. Lyria ran the final analyses, her hands steady despite the tension in her chest. The results were clear. The experiment had succeeded. Human and Viridian genetic patterns had merged perfectly, creating a pathway that could allow Lyria to conceive, a possibility her empire had deemed impossible. Lyria could hardly believe it. She turned to Kale, her eyes shining with a mixture of relief and wonder. We did it," she whispered. Kale smiled, his own eyes reflecting the quiet awe of the moment. "Yes, we did. This is proof that the impossible can be achieved when courage, knowledge, and creativity come together." For the first time in her life, Lyria felt a sense of triumph that had nothing to do with status or power. She had faced the impossible, not with arrogance or authority, but with curiosity, patience, and the willingness to learn from those her empire had dismissed. The humans had shown her that strength was not always measured in technology or control. It was measured in adaptability, resilience, and heart. Over the next days, Lyria allowed herself to rest, knowing the journey was far from over, but that a breakthrough had been achieved. She observed the humans around her, seeing not just companions or assistants, but teachers, guides, and allies in a universe that often underestimated them. And in the quiet of her private chambers, Lyria considered what this success meant for the future. The Council's expectations had been shattered. The humans' potential had been revealed. And for the first time, Lyria glimpsed a future where the limitations imposed by tradition, fear, and prejudice could be overcome. She had come to the human colony as a challenge, a joke designed by the Council to prove their superiority. Yet now she realized the real lesson was not for her alone, it was for the entire galaxy. Humans, with their simple tools, their curiosity, and their courage, could achieve wonders that even the most advanced civilizations could not anticipate. As the twin moons rose over the colony, casting silver light on the quiet streets, Lyria sat beside Kale, reflecting on the journey so far. The impossible had been achieved, but greater challenges lay ahead. The next steps would test not only science, but courage, trust, and the willingness to embrace the unknown. And Lyria was ready. For the first time, she felt that anything was possible. The journey back to Viridia Prime was silent. Princess Lyria sat in the sleek silver ship, the stars streaming past the viewport like liquid light. She held the small bundle in her arms, a child, half human, half Viridian, sleeping peacefully under the soft glow of the ship's lights. The child's small hands curled around hers, delicate and perfect, a living symbol of what she and Kale had accomplished together. The Council, she knew, expected her return as a demonstration of failure. They had sent her away as a spectacle, certain she would return empty-handed. They had not counted on the strength, courage, and ingenuity of humans, nor had they considered her own determination. Yet now she had both proof of human potential and undeniable success. Lyria had spent countless hours during the return trip reflecting on her time among humans. She had learned more than she had expected: patience, empathy, creativity, and resilience. They had taught her that failure was not the end, but a step toward discovery. They had reminded her that strength was not measured in technology alone, but in the heart, mind, and spirit. Kale had remained with her until the final preparations for departure. "The Council will not take this lightly," he had said, voice calm but firm. "But remember, the truth is on your side. Humanity's strength is undeniable." Lyria nodded, feeling a strange mixture of apprehension and resolve. The Council's rigid expectations, their arrogance, and their underestimation of humans had created an opening, a chance to demonstrate something they could not ignore. She only hoped they would see the truth, even if it challenged everything they believed. As the ship entered the upper atmosphere of Viridia Prime, the familiar landscape of crystal towers, floating walkways, and polished streets stretched below her. The palace rose in brilliance, reflecting the light of the distant sun like a mirror. The Council waited within, eager for the moment of her expected humiliation. When the ship landed, the doors opened, and Lyria stepped out, the child cradled carefully in her arms. Silence fell over the courtyard as the Council members and palace officials caught sight of her. Their expressions shifted from curiosity to disbelief and finally to shock. "Princess Lyria," the chief advisor stammered, his usual composure faltering. You have returned. And is that—" Lyria held the child higher, allowing the Council to see. The child's bright eyes opened briefly, looking around with curiosity and innocence. "This is my child," Lyria said clearly, her voice steady and strong. Half human, half Viridian, and proof that the impossible is possible. Whispers spread through the palace like wildfire. Some advisors faltered, stepping back as though the sight challenged the very foundations of their beliefs. Others stared in awe, unable to comprehend what they were seeing. The council had not anticipated success. They had certainly not anticipated this. The chief advisor finally found his voice. "Princess, this is impossible. The council, we—" Lyria held up a hand, silencing him. "It is not impossible. It only seemed so because you refused to consider humans as capable. You dismissed their ingenuity, resilience, and courage. And yet here they are, alive in this child. This child represents what you failed to see." She glanced at the assembly, her gaze sharp and commanding. "I have been sent on a challenge, one meant to humiliate me. But I have learned something far more important. Strength is not measured by technology, authority, or control. It is measured by adaptability, determination, and the willingness to face the impossible." A hush fell over the chamber. Even the emperor himself, sitting on the grand throne, looked down at the child and then back at Lyria, his expression unreadable. Lyria continued, stepping closer. "This child is proof. Humans, whom you consider primitive, possess qualities you cannot measure or predict. Their courage, creativity, and resilience rival even the most advanced Viridian technology. And if you refuse to see this, you risk underestimating a power far greater than you imagined." The room remained silent, but the weight of her words hung heavily. For the first time, the council faced undeniable truth. The beings they had dismissed as inferior had contributed directly to overcoming what they believed was impossible. Lyria's own success and the existence of her child shattered centuries of assumptions. One council member, usually outspoken and sharp-tongued, finally spoke. "Princess, if this is true, then humanity's value has been grossly underestimated. Our calculations, our beliefs, they were incomplete." Lyria's expression softened slightly, though her voice remained firm. "Incomplete, yes, but not beyond repair. Humans are not threats to be conquered or dismissed. They are allies, partners, and sources of insight. I have returned not to challenge the Empire alone, but to show that cooperation and respect can yield results far beyond expectation." The Emperor leaned forward, his eyes thoughtful. He had ruled with logic and authority for decades, yet here before him was undeniable evidence that his assumptions and those of his council had been flawed. He studied the child, then Lyria, and finally spoke. "This changes everything," he said slowly. "If what you say is true, Princess, then we must reconsider our policies, our approach, and perhaps even our understanding of the galaxy itself." Lyria inclined her head. "Indeed, Your Majesty. The humans are not merely capable of survival. They are capable of innovation, adaptation, and achievements that rival our own. Their strength lies in ways the Empire has failed to recognize, and this child represents the potential of two worlds working together." For the first time, the council seemed uncertain. Their rigid ideas of superiority had been challenged by a single human colony, a child, and the determination of one Viridian princess. Lyria held the child closer, feeling the warmth of life and possibility in her arms. A murmur of conversation spread through the council, the advisors debating quietly among themselves. Some were impressed, others reluctant to admit it, and a few still clung stubbornly to tradition. Lyria waited, confident in the undeniable truth of what she held. Finally, the Emperor raised his hand. "Let it be known," he said, his voice commanding and clear, "that the achievements of Princess Lyria and the humans shall be recognized. Their ingenuity, courage, and contribution to life itself shall be honored. And the Empire will learn from this example." The room fell silent, the weight of his declaration settling over everyone present. Lyria felt a sense of triumph, not from power or victory over others, but from the acknowledgement of truth. She had turned a cruel challenge into a moment of revelation, showing that even the smallest, most underestimated beings could achieve greatness. The child stirred in her arms, opening its bright eyes to the world, and for a moment the palace seemed to pause with them. In that gaze was the promise of the future, one where humans and Viridians could work together, learn from one another, and achieve what neither could alone. Lyria approached the Emperor. "Your Majesty," she said respectfully, "this is only the beginning. If the Empire chooses to embrace the lessons humans have shown us, resilience, creativity, and courage, then together we can achieve far more than we ever imagined." The Emperor regarded her, a faint smile forming on his lips. You have proven far more than the Council expected, Princess. You have demonstrated wisdom, courage, and insight. I am proud of your accomplishments." Lyria bowed slightly, her heart swelling with quiet pride. The Council, though some remained hesitant, began to recognize the truth she had revealed. For the first time, humans were seen not as inferior, but as equals capable of contributing to the future of the galaxy. As the day ended and the palace prepared to celebrate her return, Lyria remained focused on the child in her arms. This small life was more than a personal triumph. It was a symbol of hope, unity, and the extraordinary potential that could be realized when differences were embraced rather than dismissed. She looked around the grand hall at the faces of the council, the emperor, and the palace staff. They had all witnessed what she had achieved, and the lesson was clear. Underestimating others could lead to failure, while cooperation and recognition of strengths could lead to triumph. For Princess Lyria, the journey had transformed her understanding of herself, humanity, and the galaxy. She had been sent on a mission meant to humiliate her, yet she returned with success that none could deny. And in her arms, the child slept, a living testament to the power of possibility, determination, and courage. The future was no longer constrained by expectation or prejudice. It was wide open, filled with potential, and ready for the collaboration of two very different worlds. Lyria knew one thing for certain: the Empire would never see humanity the same way again. And neither would she. Months had passed since Princess Lyria's return to Veridia Prime. The palace, once filled with rigid routines and formalities, now carried a subtle shift in energy. The council and officials, though some remained reluctant, had begun to acknowledge the undeniable truth. Humans were more capable than anyone had predicted. Lyria's child, a small being with bright eyes and a calm presence, had become a symbol of this change, a living reminder that courage, creativity, and resilience could bridge worlds. Lyria herself had changed as well. Her time among humans had left a permanent mark on her perspective. She moved with a calm authority, not just because of her royal status, but because she carried the knowledge of what humans could achieve. She had learned patience, empathy, and the value of collaboration, qualities her empire had often overlooked, and she was determined to use these lessons to reshape the future. The child, whom she named Aaron, had begun to grow, showing traits that were both human and Viridian. Aaron was curious, perceptive, and unusually calm for a child of such a young age. The combination of human adaptability and Viridian intelligence made Aaron unique, and Lyria watched with pride and wonder as the child explored the palace, asking questions, observing everything with bright, intelligent eyes. Kale had remained on the human colony, but he often visited Veridia Prime. He and Lyria had developed a partnership built on trust and mutual respect. He marveled at Aaron's growth, understanding that the child represented the best of both worlds. And though their paths were different, the bond between Lyria and Kale had grown strong, founded on shared experiences and triumphs against what had once seemed impossible. One morning, Lyria stood on a balcony overlooking the city below. The crystal towers shimmered in the light of the distant sun, reflecting brilliance across the palace grounds. She held Aaron in her arms, the child's tiny hands grasping at the railing with curiosity. "Do you see all this, Aaron?" Lyria asked softly. "This is your world, part of both your heritages. And one day you will understand just how important it is to see the value in everyone, no matter where they come from." Aaron babbled happily, reaching toward the shimmering towers, as if already aware of the possibilities that awaited. Lyria smiled, feeling a surge of hope. The child represented more than her personal success. It represented a bridge between two civilizations, a chance for understanding, cooperation, and growth. Inside the palace, the council had begun to implement subtle changes. Advisors who had once dismissed humans as primitive now observed their methods with genuine interest. Scientists and engineers were sent to study human techniques, learning to combine Veridian technology with human innovation. Farmers and resource managers adapted human agricultural methods to improve sustainability. Even education was being revised, incorporating human problem-solving approaches alongside traditional Veridian methods. Lyria had become a central figure in this transformation. She met regularly with the council, offering insights, sharing observations, and guiding reforms. Her approach was firm but compassionate, blending her Viridian authority with lessons learned from humans. She encouraged collaboration rather than command, questioning rigid assumptions and fostering curiosity and creativity throughout the empire. The emperor, observing the changes, finally spoke to Lyria one evening in the grand throne room. "You have done more than overcome a personal challenge, princess. You have opened the eyes of the empire to a truth we had long ignored. Humanity is not merely capable, they are extraordinary in ways we had never measured. And through you, we have learned humility, courage, and hope." Lyria bowed respectfully. "Your Majesty, I only followed the truth I witnessed. Humans showed me that strength is not always in technology or authority. It is in resilience, creativity, and the willingness to face challenges, no matter how impossible they may seem." The emperor nodded, his eyes thoughtful. "Then we must ensure that this lesson is remembered not just in our records but in our actions. The galaxy is vast, and arrogance will only lead to failure. Cooperation, understanding, and respect will lead to success." As months turned into years, Aaron grew into a child of remarkable abilities. The blend of human adaptability and Viridian intellect made learning natural and intuitive. Aaron excelled in both science and strategy, but also showed creativity and empathy, traits uncommon in Viridian society but highly valued among humans. Lyria guided the child gently, teaching lessons from both her heritage and the human colony. One afternoon, Aaron ran to Lyria holding a small mechanical device they had created. "Look, Mother!" the child exclaimed, eyes sparkling with excitement. "I made it work like the humans taught us." Lyria knelt, her heart swelling with pride. "That's wonderful, Aaron. You are learning the best of both worlds. Remember, what you have inside you is a gift, creativity, courage, and intelligence combined. And one day, you will show others how powerful that combination can be." Aaron beamed, returning to the experiment with enthusiasm. Lyria watched for a moment, reflecting on how far both she and the Empire had come. What had begun as a mission of ridicule and doubt had transformed into a movement of understanding and cooperation. The humans had proven their worth not through force or conquest, but through ingenuity, resilience, and the quiet courage to persevere. Lyria knew the Empire still had challenges ahead. There were those who clung stubbornly to old beliefs, fearful of change. But she also knew that the seed had been planted, and it would grow. The existence of Aaron, the child of two worlds, was proof that cooperation and respect could lead to outcomes far beyond what anyone had imagined. One evening, Lyria walked with Kale along the palace gardens. The twin moons reflected softly in the water, and the air carried the gentle scent of blooming flowers. "I never imagined it would turn out this way," Kale said quietly. "You have changed the Empire, Princess." Lyria smiled. "I only followed what I learned. Humans taught me to see value where others saw limitations. That lesson has been more powerful than any title or authority." Kale nodded. "And your child, Aaron, will remind everyone of that lesson for years to come. The future is bright because of what you have done." Lyria gazed at Aaron playing nearby, the child's laughter echoing in the gardens. "Yes," she said softly, "the future is bright. And it will only grow brighter as we continue to learn from each other, from both humans and Viridians alike." The palace, once a place of rigid expectations and cold authority, had become a hub of collaboration and innovation. Human and Viridian scientists worked side by side, sharing knowledge, learning from each other's strengths, and achieving results that neither could have accomplished alone. The Empire had begun to understand that the greatest power lay not in domination, but in cooperation and respect. And Lyria, once sent as a pawn in a cruel game, had become a symbol of change, courage, and the extraordinary potential that could be realized when differences were embraced rather than dismissed. The galaxy beyond Viridia watched quietly as news of her success spread. Other civilizations, hearing of the human-Viridian alliance, began to reconsider their own assumptions about strength, intelligence, and potential. The story of a princess, a human colony, and a child who represented both worlds inspired hope and curiosity across star systems. Years passed, and Aaron grew into a young person of remarkable insight and ability. Lyria guided them with patience, teaching not only science and strategy, but also empathy, resilience, and the value of curiosity. Aaron became a bridge between humans and Viridians, traveling between worlds, sharing knowledge and fostering understanding. And throughout it all, Lyria remembered the lesson humans had taught her. That strength is not always visible, that courage comes in many forms, and that even the smallest, most underestimated beings can achieve greatness beyond imagination. The Empire had changed. The Council had learned humility, and the galaxy, once divided by assumptions of superiority, had been given a glimpse of a new future, one in which humans and Viridians, working together, could achieve the impossible. Princess Lyria looked at her child one last time that evening, the twin moons casting soft light over the palace. "You are the future, Aaron," she whispered. "A future where cooperation, courage, and understanding will shape the galaxy. Never forget what we have learned and never stop believing in the impossible." And with that, a new era began, an era of unity, hope, and extraordinary possibilities. The child's bright eyes reflected the promise of worlds working together, a living testament to what could be achieved when courage, resilience, and ingenuity were recognized and nurtured. The galaxy would never be the same again.